Let's give a round of applause for Workbox for hosting. All right, so if you're here to learn how you can grow your SaaS startup from 0 to 1 million in ARR, you're in the right room. And if you're not, you can stay here anyway. My name is Dick Polipnik. A little bit about me to give you some context of why today's presentation is going to provide some value. I started a company called Online Growth Systems. It was a digital marketing agency and software development firm. Built that for about 6 years from 2016, sold that in January of 2022 to a company called Snap Agency based out here locally in Minnetonka. They were doing a roll-up strategy, buying small mom and pop agencies like mine. Ended up being number 2 person over there, so I was their vice president of operations and technology, so I was leading both the development team, and when you're leading operations at a marketing agency, you're leading the marketing team. Built that for about a year post-acquisition, helped them achieve their best bottom line that they had had in about a decade, and then I moved on to a company called Gymdesk. And the reason I went to Gymdesk is part of the reason I grew Online Growth Systems the way I did. When we started out, we were all things to all people. We were doing way too much stuff for tons of industries, from pie shops to insurance agencies to dentists, and we slowly started to figure out how business actually works. And we niched down throughout the course of that 6 years, and we settled on software as a service being our target market. That was our niche. We found out that we were best at it. I enjoyed it the most, and we got the most results for the clients, so we started to build a reputation in that space. Joined Gymdesk as a part of that journey. I knew that my path was going to take me down the software as a service route long term anyway, so when I joined that was my first time in an in-house role working at a SaaS company. What they did was gym management software, so the iPad that you use to check into yoga class to the billing system that charges your credit card each month for your membership. Tripled their revenue in under a year. Super excited about that. Learned a ton. Great CEO that I learned a lot from. And just as of yesterday, accepted a role at GoRoute. So as of yesterday, I'm joining a company called GoRoute. We essentially have wearable devices for football, baseball, and softball teams, so that way coaches can call the plays from the sidelines using a smart device, and it goes up to like a military satellite and goes down to the wearable devices, so you don't have to be doing calls or boards. So it really increases the pace of play, both in practice, you can get more reps in to get those plays ran, and also in the game, in-game communication between players and coaches is really changing the world. So super excited about that company. One of the reasons I joined them is because when the CEO was pitching me on joining their business, it really reminded me of the goals that they had over at Apple back in the day when Steve Jobs said, I want to have a personal computer in every home in America. They said, we want to have GoRoute devices on every football team, softball team, and baseball team in the United States. And I said, that's a goal I can get behind. That sounds fun. So joined them as of yesterday. Here's today's agenda. It's going to be about 60 minutes. We're going to try to speed it up a little bit here because we had a little bit of a late start. So if you have to leave early, it's totally fine. We're going to start with this brief welcome. Then we're going to go into the startup starter pack. Then we're going to go into the rule of ones, the ACES model, and you'll learn what each of those acronym letters mean later. And then we're going to finally wrap up with the growth decision quadrant. So today's talk, the reason I've got a whiteboard up here is because we're going to be doing a lot of drawing. So if you have paper and pen, I highly recommend you taking that out and drawing. It's going to be kind of difficult to take notes on a phone or something like that. Or plan B is you can start taking pictures of the whiteboard so you can have them for later. That's your second option. So who is this session for? You are ready to scale your SaaS startup. You are an entrepreneur. You're a developer, you're a founder, or you're an investor in the SaaS space. Both B2B, direct to consumer, B2C, those all can work for today's talk. You've already found product market fit. The reason there's an asterisk there is don't fret if you're still in the idea stage or you haven't found that product market fit yet. Part of the startup starter pack, we're going to be addressing how you can get there. But the most value you're going to get from today is if you've already found that product market fit, so you can start to scale from that 0 to 1 million. Because you already have a working product with paying customers. So that's going to be the most applicable for today's lessons. And of course, you have the desire and you want to hit that 1 million in ARR. If you didn't, I don't know why you're going to Twin City Startup Week in the first place, right? Fun animation, just had to include that. So who this session is not for is pre-revenue startups. You haven't found that product market fit. You don't have a working product, or you don't have paying customers yet, or you don't want to hit that 1 million ARR. So here is the Startup Starter Pack. We've all heard for about a decade or so the mantra of achieving product market fit. It's going to help you get fundraising from investors. It's going to help you get traction. It's essentially one of the main pieces of the puzzle that you need to do to start scaling your business, regardless if you're in SaaS or in manufacturing or e-commerce or whatever that is. So we all know the story of an entrepreneur who's a visionary builds an amazing product. They put hundreds of thousands of dollars of their own money, investors' money, into this product. They maybe raise money from family and friends, and they're super passionate about this idea that they have. They build this product, and then they go out to the world, and there's crickets, right? So what we want to do is we want to avoid hearing the crickets, especially after years in development, hundreds of thousands of dollars of capital, and of course some sleepless nights. So this is the lesson that I learned from Brian Belfort, who is the CEO of a company called Reforge. If you're unfamiliar with Reforge, highly recommend looking it up. It's a great business. You can learn a ton, especially if you're in the SaaS space. And Brian proposes that this concept makes sense, but it's flipped. It's incorrect because it's not chronological. If you change it from product market fit to market product fit, it makes a lot more sense chronologically. Statistically, you're more likely to succeed as a business if you address the market first, find that problem, and then you build a product around it. You build the solution. So if anybody here has seen the animated movie Robots, it came out in the early 2000s. I remember going to the movie theater when I was growing up with my family and watching that and thinking it was the funniest thing ever. There is a character in there who is an inventor, everything from dishwashers to these flying platforms to trains that can fly. And the mantra that entrepreneur in that movie says is see a need, fill a need. And that was one of the earliest entrepreneurial lessons I actually ever remember was watching that animated movie. So if you see that need, find the market first, find the channel first, then build the product to fit that. You're going to have a much more higher likelihood of succeeding in getting to that 1 million in ARR. This I pulled from my experience running agencies for 7 years. So one of the best ways to market your company is having a very clear understanding of what makes you different than your competitors. Why should customers pick you over competitors A, B, and C, X, Y, Z? So some things you have to have are key differentiators. The rule of thumb is typically you want to have around 3 that are crystal clear. And I'm not talking about, oh, we have better customer service, we have a better UI, we have better marketing. Those aren't key differentiators. Those are things that you should have in your business regardless of the company that you're trying to build. These are things that, well, let's use an example. Let's use Shopify as an example. So what do we think are some of Shopify's key differentiators? It's going to be interactive. What was it?
Interface with banking and credit card.
Yeah, let's call that payments, right? Payments, definitely. You don't have to integrate with Stripe, Square. It's all baked into the product. What else?
Easy to adopt.
Easy. It's another one. What else?
User access.
User access? Yep. Let's call this also that you don't need a development team, right? You can be an entrepreneur. You can be grandma who's making crocheted, cushions, and if you can log on to the webinar to learn how to use Shopify, you can probably use Shopify. So we're going to say no developers.
Low barrier for the payer, because a lot of payers already have their information in the shop.
Yeah, right. So there's a baked-in user base of people for payments, right? So we're going to go baked-in user base.
App network.
App network. It's a great one. That's probably one. So these ones are ones that came over time, right? Those weren't overnight. So you can't really say these are going to be our key differentiators on day one, where you're going from that 1 to a million or 0 to a million. But those are ones that you can slowly add, and you can differentiate yourself in the market even further. Right? So having no developers, no hosting is definitely one of them. Ease of use, definitely one of them. Having a payment processor is all baked in, not just a proprietary one, but the ones that people are commonly using, PayPal, right? Awesome. So the next piece is value proposition. So from your key differentiators, you're going to have your value proposition is where are you going to be different in the marketplace. I would also say that they have a lower price point, right? It's easier to get spun up timeline-wise than WooCommerce, Magento, all of those competitors. So the timeline to deployment is lower, the cost of investment is lower, and the technical threshold is lower, right? So those are just massive key differentiators. That's why they've achieved that traction that they've achieved. And finally, the last piece of the startup starter pack is understanding if your SaaS company is going to be product-led or sales-led. This is something, candidly, I learned in about the last 5 years, and it really skyrocketed the results that I helped get some of the software companies that I worked with, is knowing, are you going to be a product-led or a sales-led company, because they're very, very different. The strategies that work for one don't always work for the other, although you will see often a lot of entrepreneurs, especially in startups, try to do sales-led tactics in product-led companies and vice versa, and that's why they feel like they're not achieving that traction. So let's kind of draw out this. So we've got product-led, and then we've got sales-led. Where do you think Shopify lands? Product, definitely. Right? A good rule of thumb is if you have a funnel, a user acquisition funnel that doesn't require talking to a salesperson, you're probably a product-led company, right? How about Slack? Also product-led, especially Slack, because another rule of thumb is if you plan to have a free trial or a free plan, you're more than likely also going to be a product-led company. If you're trying to do the free plan route in your sales-led, that's going to be difficult. Although, let's use an interesting example. How about HubSpot? Where do you think HubSpot lands? Little of both.
They were sales-led early days.
Yeah.
Early years, man, it was all sales.
Right. You had to talk to a sales rep back in the day, right? And then as they started to expand their business, they started to build in more features. They started getting traction. They had the capital and the time to invest in building their product. They're able to do a little bit of both. So that's the right answer. So HubSpot started out of sales-led, but then they also transitioned over to product-led as they build. They have a free CRM tool, right? So you can be a small startup, sign up for their sales or their CRM, even start out with their sales starter pack, right, for $20 a month, and you can feed yourself over to the enterprise plans. That's why they have different tiers of plans, which we're going to be talking about later, but that's when they start nurturing you with their sales team. So they do both. That's a good example. How about Salesforce? Sales-led. It's in the name, right? A good rule of thumb is if you can't find their pricing page or it's difficult to find what they charge, they're probably sales-led. With a few exceptions, AWS is, I would argue, product-led, although they don't really have a pricing page per se. So, awesome. Understanding which one you are is going to help you eliminate some of the shiny object syndrome that entrepreneurs get when they think, okay, should we build a landing page for enterprise companies? Well, if you're going to start out being product-led, you probably don't want to pursue enterprise companies right away. You can build up to that, like HubSpot kind of transition from one to the other to be in both markets. So understanding which one you are is going to be key, especially when we get into the ACES framework, which we'll be talking about soon here. Some of those are going to be specifically for sales-led organizations, and some of those are going to be specifically for product-led organizations. And understanding which one you are is going to help you determine what your game plan is going to be. Next is the rule of ones. I've got to do some erasing here. The rule of ones, we're going to draw a nice big triangle with a nice big beautiful one in the middle. So the rule of ones says that when you're starting out, having focus is going to help you gain traction faster. When you're talking to investors, oftentimes some of the feedback you'll hear early in the career is you need to have focus, right? You need to pick a niche. Right? This is something that I struggled with when I started my business, right? We were all things to all people, pie shops, dental offices, insurance agencies. and then we niched over time. This is a lesson learned the hard way, right? Once we picked SaaS as our target market, we started to grow a lot faster. That word of mouth is the greatest growth flywheel that you can grow, and by focusing on one of those, or by having focus and picking a niche, it's going to help you get there. So the rule of one says you have one customer. Picking one customer is going to be really, really hard, especially when people are going to be offering you money and they don't fit into this framework. They aren't your target customer. Not saying you don't have to say no, but I wouldn't actively pursue that audience. You're building your messaging, you're building your product, you're building your campaigns, all focused around that one customer, because when they get to your website, they're going to read the pain points that they feel, and they're going to go, oh my God, they're talking to me. This is my problem. This is the solution for me. Versus when you're trying to be all things to all people, they're going to be kind of wondering if that's them, and then your competitor, who is targeting specifically them, they're going to feel more empathy with that, and they're going to go with your competitor. The next piece is picking one channel. This is something that we learned in my agency days as well, that by focusing one channel, and it was difficult for me as an agency owner too, because the more I can sell them, the more revenue my company has, right? So let's sell them Google paid per click advertising. Let's talk about Pinterest. Let's talk about Instagram, TikTok, blogs, SEO, optimization, website development, right? There's a whole slew of services we could sell them, but by talking to startups, the key is starting out right away, you want to throw, or what you don't want to do is throw a bunch of spaghetti noodles at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Going back to the product-led versus sales-led, that's already going to eliminate 50% of the noodles that you could possibly throw at the wall, knowing which one you are, right? But then the next piece is picking that one channel. You can start out, maybe give yourself a 3-month timeline, test out those channels. You want to give it due diligence, see what works. Don't spend too much money. You can learn a lot off of $100 on Facebook advertising if you do it right, right? Once you start to figure out, oh my gosh, we're really discovering that Capterra is a great user acquisition strategy for us. We've got great reviews, and that cost per click advertising is really beneficial to us because none of our competitors are there. Try to find that blue ocean for that one channel and stick to it. And the last piece of the rule of one's triangle is having one product. This is difficult for technical founders because they want to build everything on day one, right? And I went back to school for software development, not to become a developer, but because I wanted to help be a better leader at SaaS companies. So I intentionally went to school for that. So I've got a little bit of the engineer developer brain in me as well, and the idea of building those products, having that shiny object syndrome of adding this feature and that feature is really difficult to say no to, especially when you're the founder who's also the technical founder. But by focusing on one product, it's going to make this triangle work a lot better because you're going to have one solution for one customer, and you're going to have one user acquisition channel to get there. Let's move into the ACES model. So this is going to be the bulk of the talk today. What we're going to do is we're going to draw 3 big circles. Then we're going to draw these little fins on each of them. And then we're going to add 2 lines to each fin to divide this into 3 portions. And the ACES model goes like this. We have A, C, E, and S. Good thing I can still spell this morning. Okay, let's dive into the first piece of the ACES model, which is attract. Attract is the first piece of the ACES model specifically for SaaS companies. This is not one of the models that you could apply to other businesses, although there's going to be components of it that'll work, but this particular framework works especially for software as a service companies. Moving into Attract, we're going to talk about the first piece of Attract, which is authority. This includes testimonials, case studies, reviews, not just on your website, not just screenshots. I'm talking let's get GetApp Capterra, G2, getting that third-party validation, those websites, so that you can't fabricate it. So there's a lot more trust behind it with users. I would definitely write those companies down if you haven't heard of them yet. They're definitely worth looking into, especially for that one channel piece. Capterra, G2, great channels. We used it a lot at GymDesk, had a lot of growth from that. So authority. Authority is the first component. Testimonials, not just written testimonials. See if you can get some video testimonials. Get a screen recording of your customers talking about why they like your product. Put that on your landing page. Hey, let's say that you're Shopify. I'm a small business owner. I was selling these at craft sales. It was really difficult for me. I wanted to spend weekends with my family. I uploaded to Shopify. It took me 2 days to build, blah, 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 right? You got that 60-second clip. Somebody who's in that same market who feels those same pain points. I want to spend weekends with my family too, right? I don't want to keep going to these craft shows. That piece of authority is going to build trust with them. It's going to build empathy with them because they see somebody who's been in their situation, who has had the outcome that they also want. The next piece is fill the funnel. This is a no-brainer, right? But filling your funnel is really important. Again, back to the product versus sales, filling your funnel is going to look very different depending on what piece of that equation you fall on. If you're product-led, this means getting traffic, right? Is SEO the right route for you? Is pay-per-click the right route for you? Is affiliate marketing the right route for you? If you are sales-led, you're probably getting lists. You want to feed your sales team leads. So is that going to Zoom info, right? Is that going to other data scraping tools? Is that hiring somebody overseas to go across your customers' websites and get that name, that phone number, that email, right? For us at GymDesk, we used Zoom Info, and then here in GoRoute, we're actually going to be hiring people overseas to go to go to websites because there's a lot of youth sports organizations that have their coaches' name, email, phone number listed publicly on their websites. That's a great source for us. So that's going to be a user acquisition channel that I'm planning to implement, is hiring those folks, build us a list that's custom, proprietary to us. Typically those are updated in real time because as seasons come and go, parents need to know who the coach is for that season, so it's updated at least once a year, so we know that it's a little bit relevant. And then feeding that into our CRM, like HubSpot or Salesforce, is key. Once you've got your funnel filled, the next piece is automate. This is one of my personal favorite pieces of this entire equation. I'm very process and systems oriented person. Maybe that's my developer background. Maybe that's the entrepreneur in me that's been kicked a couple of times because it was a little too visionary, and then you start to figure out, oh, these processes and systems really help me stay focused and grow, right? But automating the piece, you can call this is a large part of it is marketing. This is a lot of the marketing pieces of this flywheel. But when you automate, this is using things like HubSpot, Zapier, Chili Piper, if you're doing sales-led, right? Having that one-click book a meeting via an email with Chili Piper is changing the game in how sales are booked, right? They're not that old of a company, but they're getting a lot of traction because they found that pain point of going to Calendly, finding a date that works for you, looking at your phone, clicking on the day, then clicking on the time, then filling out your information. I mean, you just went from 50 clicks down to 1. Crazy, right? So things like Chili Piper are really taking this to the extreme. So use that if you're a sales-led organization. The next piece, the C, stands for convert. Yes?
Before you go to convert, I just have a question about attract.
Yeah.
There's a lot of noise, I would say, right now about software as a service firms and how much the whole attraction phase has changed in the last 18 to 24 months.
Mm-hmm.
With the notion of demand generation and dark social. Any thoughts on that, and especially how that has impacted this kind of authority, build a funnel, automate process that you're talking about?
Yeah. So I want to dive a little deeper. So you're talking about how to eliminate the noise, or what's the question?
Well, I think that there's this phrase that's being used a lot for B2B software as a service firms called demand generation.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that marketing and attraction
Mm-hmm.
that you have to start generating demand differently than you have in the past by building a community.
Mm-hmm.
And that fills your funnel completely differently, and it also changes the automation tools that you're going to use inside of that process. So that's my question, I think, is whether or not you have a perspective on that and how that's changing the traction.
Yeah, that's a great question. I hold the belief that if you're really good at the old methods, if they're still working for you, why would you try to change? Why would you try to jump on the new trend of the month, the flavor of the month, whether that's TikTok, ChatGPT, NFTs? Remember when NFTs were going to change the world, and here we are, right? So my perspective is whether it's building a community or using different tools, I'm definitely a fan of experimentation. That's a piece that isn't in today's talk. But part of the principles that I do when I go into a company is I write down hypothesis, right? I have a hypothesis that TikTok was going to really blow us up at Gym Desk, because the first thing I did is one of the channels that I was going to explore was doing, sorry, I'm thinking of the word. It was working with influencers, people who already had existing audiences of gym owners. What I found out was there was like 5 of them, because when you eliminate the people who are fitness influencers, they're working with the end consumer, you're left with like 5 total people who are influencing business owners that are owning those gyms. And out of those 5 people, like 3 of them were agencies, 2 of them were just speakers that were trying to sell you a course, and then pretty much at the end of the day, you're left with nobody else, right? So instead of doing that strategy, that hypothesis didn't work, but what I did is I discovered that there was a lack of presence for a company to go in there and really build out that piece of authority, so there's a gap in the market. So we started to create our own content. So I had another hypothesis that was birthed from that was TikTok, right? And that's been around for a couple of years now, so it's not like it's a brand new trend, right? We can see that it's had steady growth. It's got an amazing algorithm. The churn rate there, or the stickiness level of getting those users to stay on page, is borderline mentally health toxic, right? It's that powerful. So we went onto that platform, we started posting shorts. We had a podcast already. We started clipping that into little snippets of gold nuggets and posting that on TikTok. And I was right. We had hundreds and hundreds of views with 0 followers, like within hours of posting our very first video. So what we did is we started posting more. We started to figure out what our audience wanted to hear. We started learning the algorithm. You start to post more and more, and then you start to gain traction. So I'm a big fan of still experimenting, but like I did with the influencer marketing stuff, if the experimentation doesn't work and you find out that it's a dead end, cut your loss, right? Move on to the next thing. Does that kind of help answer the question a little bit?
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. I noticed some nods when I mentioned phrase demand generation, so if anybody's interested in looking into that. Yeah, there's a guy named Chris Walker from Refine Labs, and if you follow him on LinkedIn, he kind of writes about how this is changing entirely for B2B software as a service firms for free every day on LinkedIn. So
Awesome.
Chris Walker at Refine Labs. Yeah,
Cool.
I have no affiliation to them. I just have learned a lot by following him.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. So now that we're looking at convert in the ACES model, the first piece is rocking your demos. So when you have that customer, you've done everything so far, you've done it right. You've built authority, they trust you. You've filled the funnel, you've got that traffic, you've built that list of targeted people that actually want your product. You've automated them, you've eliminated that need for having a ton of people manually following up with that sales funnel, right? You finally get them to book a demo with you, and you bomb it, right? They don't quite understand the solution that you've built. They don't understand that they are the customer that you're trying to go after, that you are the solution to their problem. So rocking a demo is really important to making sure that you have that piece nailed, and you don't want that to be the chink in your armor going forward building your SaaS company. If you want to learn more about how to rock a demo, Dan Martell, the guy that I learned this whole model from, has a great keynote that talks exclusively on this small portion of how to absolutely destroy demos and get them from the demo to signing those contracts, signing up for a trial, getting them rolled out to users in their organization. So really good material on that.
That's a video, a YouTube video?
Yep, you can find it, yeah.
What was his name again?
Dan Martell.
Thanks.
Yep. The next piece is of the ACES model is your pipeline needs to have a process. First of all, you need to have a pipeline, period, right? Make sure that you have that CRM, whether that's HubSpot, whether that's Pipedrive, whatever that is. You need to have that pipeline, and then you need to have a process. Too many entrepreneurs go in there blindly, following up snoozing emails for 2 weeks, phone calling them because they're hungry, because their bank account's looking low, so they need to drum up sales, so they get on the phone and they start dialing, right? That kind of an approach is going to be, that's throwing the spaghetti at the wall, right, and hoping that it sticks, right? Having a cadence with a specific timeline that you have predetermined, and this is something that you learn and you refine over time, but knowing, okay, our typical pipeline process, we've learned, is if we send 10 emails, we sprinkle in 3 phone calls, we have 1 video demo, and we leave a voicemail if they don't pick up the phone in those 3 phone call situations, and if at the end of that pipeline process they still haven't purchased, we're axing it, right? We're putting it in some kind of a backlog, we're taking them off our marketing list on HubSpot to save cost on our monthly spend, because they're unlikely to convert at that point. So you need to start learning that, right? Stop wasting your time on customers that aren't going to convert, right? So knowing what that process is and applying it to your pipeline, a cool thing about this is you can start to feed that piece into automate, right? You can automate this process to a really high extent, right? You're still having those phone calls. You're still customizing those emails to be relevant to the conversation you just had, but you can automate a lot of it. You can have that pre-built template, change a couple of words, buzzwords that they said during your demo, make sure that it sounds relevant to them so it doesn't sound cookie cutter, but you can eliminate, let's say, 90% of the writing for you because you found that email that works really well for follow-ups. Next piece is webinars. The beautiful thing about webinars is you can sell one to many, right? Having a webinar, you can be the sole salesperson, and you can have hundreds or even thousands of potential customers on the other end. If you have more than one person tuned into that webinar, it was worth doing the webinar, right? If you have 2 people watching. And some people would say, oh, 2 people attending my webinar, that sucked, that was a failed webinar. What are you talking about? You just sold to 2 different companies at the same time. That sounds like a win to me. You know, that's like having 2 prospects on the call, but you don't have the issues of them, let's say they're 2 competitors, right? So anything like that is a great opportunity. A cool thing to remember is if you want to go from 1 to 1 million, you can sell one to many. The ACES model, next piece is the E. Stands for expand. You can kind of see how we're looking at this almost from a chronological perspective. You need to track them, then you need to convert them, then you expand with that customer. What that looks like, the first thing you need to do is you need to fix your churn. If you're doing everything right, you're attracting them, you're converting them, they're signing up, they're actually paying you, they're putting in a credit card, and you're starting to get that recurring revenue, you're starting to get that MRR to build up to your ARR, you're getting to that 0 to 1 million ARR. But you have a churn problem, it's going to be really difficult getting to that $1 million mark, right? Because if you're losing 10, 20, even 5% of your customer base on a month-to-month basis, you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? Why not take 2 steps forward and stay there? The holy grail of software companies is achieving net negative churn, right? Which is where you have more customers of your existing customer base upgrading to a higher tiered plan, giving you more money per month out of your existing customers that you've already acquired. You have more of that going on revenue-wise than you have people who are leaving. So once you achieve net negative churn, you found the holy grail of SaaS. That's when venture capital starts getting extremely interested. That's when you know you've found product market fit or market product fit. That's when you can start talking to investors. It's easier to raise. It's easier to sell your company. Your valuation goes from 5x to maybe 8x or maybe even 10, right? Because you have that net negative churn. If the buyer just buys it and does nothing with it, with net negative churn, it's going to grow. That sounds like a great asset to me, right? So that's the key, first key thing. The next piece is having customer success really nailed down. This includes your account executives, your customer support, making sure that their retention is high, right? They can feed into this. The job of the customer success team is not just to keep your existing customers happy. Giving them a growth metric of your job is to help grow our existing customer base and spend more money with us. It's your job to upsell them. When you start seeing those triggers in the product that's somehow indicating that they might be ready for an upgrade, it's your job to follow up with them, contact them. If you're in a customer support meeting and they're starting to ask questions about their plan, let's say you're in a video call for support and they're starting to ask questions that are indicators to you, they're triggers that are telling you that I think they're ready for the pro plan. They need to get away from the starter plan because they're starting to get growing pains, right? It's their job to have that growth. So setting those metrics and having some kind of incentive, whether it's commission or it's bonuses, something like that, and having that carrot at the end of the stick for the customer success team is really, really important. Expansion revenue is the final piece here. Expansion revenue is kind of, we've talked about it a little bit already. It's having packages that they can upgrade to, right? It's having, if you imagine a staircase, maybe even another one here, we have like a free plan if you're product led. Then you have the starter plan. You've got the pro plan. You've got an enterprise plan. Having an expansion revenue opportunity for those customers to go from the free, they upgrade to the paid plan. They go to the pro plan because your customer service team heard that they have an opportunity for that. They call them and they say, hey, it sounds like you guys are going through some growth pains. I know you guys your budget's tight. What if we offered you a 10% discount for a 1-year contract to just kind of get you started? See if this fixes the problem that you're experiencing. And they say, sure, let's give it a shot. Or try this plan for 30 days for free at the price of this plan. And if you don't like it, you can revert back. If you like it, you can stick to it. Awesome, sounds great. Then, of course, selling to the enterprise plan. This also feeds back into the rule of ones that we talked about earlier, that triangle. That one product, you need to figure out where it is on this scale. I'd recommend probably avoiding this right off the bat. You can do that. There are companies that succeed. There's been a couple of acquisitions locally here in the Twin Cities in the last couple of years that they had one product, they sold to enterprise, they sold to Target, Best Buy, and like Hormel. Those were like their 3 customers, and they had an exit. Awesome. If you can do that, sounds great. You probably need a little bit more experience to know how to do that or some kind of contacts. But if you start in the middle of the market, like HubSpot did, their niche was middle market, and then they built, later they added more hubs. They built Ops Hub a couple of years ago, if you remember that. That was their opportunity to start competing at the same level with Salesforce so they could have more integrations. Having that enterprise that comes later is something that you can add on once you've achieved a little bit of saturation. One thing, going back to the rule of ones for just a moment, how you know it's time to go to that second customer or that second channel or build that second product, a good way to think about that is by using the 80-20 rule or the Pareto principle, or in tech you might call it the power law. It's all the same name for the exact same principle. Once you've reached a certain amount of saturation, let's say you've occupied 80% of your target market. You've achieved that in that one customer. Well, at that point, you need to start selling to that second customer, build that second customer target profile, build the third once you've achieved that, right? And you start to scale from there. Same thing with channels. Once you've really, you've found that channel, let's say it's Facebook advertising, let's say it's SEO, and there's no possible way you can get more traffic than you already are. This is something that we experienced at Gymdesk. We hit saturation in SEO. That was our one acquisition channel. That was the one that we optimized first because we were getting a lot of our existing traffic and a lot of our existing customers from that. We said, let's max this out till we hit critical mass. We're getting 80% of the traffic that we could get. We're not spending gobs and gobs of crazy amounts of money, but we're hitting 80% of that. Now, let's explore that second channel. That's when I started looking into influencer marketing, right? Which eventually led to content creation. So once you hit that 80% mark, that's your indicator. Build or go after that second customer, go start that second channel, and then of course, as you achieve both of those things, you can start introducing second products. because you've already got those customers. It's going to be an easy upsell to that existing customer because you want to have upgradable tiers. There's going to be another little nugget here for expansion revenue. It's called the 3 Ps of expansion revenue. And what those look like is pricing, packaging, and positioning. Understanding the price points of these marks, where they're going to be optimized, is key. Split testing, that experimentation we talked about earlier, is going to be a really great indicator of how you can find that price point. Selling something for $97 is proven to sell more than a price point of $100. That's why things always end in odd numbers, right? That's always why you're buying something for $49 a month instead of $50 a month, because it's psychologically is shown that it sells more, right? So even if you get a 2% increase, 2%, that's a lot, right? Especially if you start to add a little, 2%, 2%, 3%, 1%, you start to build that flywheel. Well, now you're growing at 50% year over year, and you're achieving really good growth. VCs are getting interested. You're looking at acquisitions. Maybe you have the capital to buy your competitors. You can start building those second products. You can invest in hiring your team, et cetera, right? So understanding pricing is going to be key here. Split test it. Read a book about it. Look up a YouTube video. Understand pricing. Not enough people spend time optimizing their pricing. You're saying, oh, well, I'm decreasing my price by $3 per customer. Yeah, but if you get another 1,000 customers a year, it more than pays for itself, right? So for packaging, a company that does this really well is McDonald's. They hardly make any money on their burgers, right? They're almost breaking even. Where they make their money is on the fries and the sugar water, right? They're selling the fries and the Coke. That's where their profit margin is. So they can package, they bundle those things, so that way when you buy the value meal, that's when they're experiencing their profit. So knowing, okay, you might have, this is your core product at the bottom tier. This is what they need to use your product and realize those benefits. But not only do you get the core product, but wait, there's more, right? You get this plus this, but just for the price of this, right? Understanding bundling is going to be really important for how you structure this expansion revenue piece. And then, of course, positioning is in the marketplace. Are you the cheap solution? Are you the pipe drive compared to the HubSpot, compared to the Salesforce, right? Where do you fit in the market? And that also influences your pricing and your packaging, right? You're not going to have a ton of integrations with Pipedrive, right? Where you're going to have more integrations is with HubSpot, and even more yet is with Salesforce, right? So understanding that is going to be a key piece to understanding your expansion revenue. The last piece of the ACES model, if I can find the right colored marker, is scale. That's the key, right? That's why we're here. You want to start scaling your business. Once you get all of these components in place, you start to achieve that scale. This all feeds into that growth flywheel, getting those growth loops in place. Next, we're going to talk about the growth decision quadrant. We're almost done here. First thing we're going to do, we're going to draw a graph. Told you there's going to be a lot of drawing today. Triangles and squares and circles. It's like elementary, right? So let's draw a graph. On this graph, we have an X and a Y axis. On the X axis, this is our cost. And we have low cost, and we have high. So you can see which direction this is going, right? On the Y-axis, we have expected value. What's the value you're going to expect? Or you can call this return, right? If you think about ROI, this is your investment. This is the return. And the O is somewhere over here for fun. 0, there you go. That actually makes sense. So low here again, and high, again going that direction. So now that we've drawn our graph, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start listing our options, our opportunities. You can use this growth decision quadrant for several things. You can use this for determining which feature you're going to build next in your product. So if you want to meet up with your dev team, your product team, start mapping out, okay, how much is this going to cost? Cost includes time, opportunity cost, capital. It's all aspects of cost. Cost might be timeline, right? Not just time and measure of hours that you're putting in, investment hours, man hours, but it might be timeline. Hey, to build this next feature, to integrate with API ABC, we need to hire a more senior dev that's experienced with that tool because we don't have the talent. Well, it's going to take us 6 months to find somebody, to recruit somebody. So that might be a high cost timeline-wise, right? So thinking about costs in multiple aspects is going to be key here. So now let's start, but for this example, let's use marketing initiatives as the example instead of products because we're not talking about a product right now. Where do we think, or let's just hear from the audience. What do you guys think are some possible marketing opportunities that you could do? Just start like naming things. Webinars. Webinars. Where do you think webinars land on here? Low cost. Low cost. High value. High value. Okay. Low cost, high value. We'll put webinars up here. Whoops. How am I doing? That goes over here. High value, low cost, right? Selling one to many, right? Low cost, it costs $50 a month for using the software. That's pretty low cost. It might take you a couple hours to prepare something, right? But once you have it prepared, rinse and repeat, baby, right? You can even set it on an evergreen recording and have it run by itself, automated for $50 a month. You have a recording selling for you to many people at the same time. And you do it every Tuesday and Thursday at 9 a.m. We also did that at Gym Desk. It worked really well. What's another one? Great example, thank you. Conferences and trade shows. Let's call that events. Where do you think that lands?
Medium cost, medium to high cost.
Okay.
High return.
High return. So we'll put events here. Awesome example. And of course, these are going to be totally dependent on your business. They're going to be changing for different ones. If you're selling to Fortune 500s, if you're selling this enterprise plan, the cost for an event might be over here, right? If you're selling to small businesses and you can go set up a booth at Twin City Startup Week, you can probably get a booth for free. The cost might be over here, right? So it could vary, but I like the spot in the middle. That makes sense. What's another one?
Social media communication and posting.
Yeah, social. Where do we think social lands on here?
Low cost and high, up by webinars, yeah.
Okay, social. Right? You can write a tweet in 30 seconds. Doing a full production of posting a 2-hour state of the state or state of the whatever industry you're in, plumber's webinar or event that you're feeding into social, you're going to chop that video up into 60 different snippets, right? That might have a higher cost, right? So again, something that can shift around. How about Google pay-per-click advertising? Where do we think that lands? High cost. Mid cost. So let's say, depends if you're good at it. Great answer. And it depends on your business. It depends on your competitors is the real answer. If your competitors are bidding for those keywords and they're willing to spend $200 to acquire that click, the traffic alone, let alone a lead, let's just say they're paying $200 for the click, right? That's a pretty high cost acquisition channel depending on your products, right? If there's nobody there and you've discovered, let's say that you're in a blue ocean, you have a brand new, you did the rule of ones triangle, you found a channel that is a blue ocean that none of your competitors are at. You found that one customer that has a pain point that hasn't been solved yet, right? You can probably get it pretty low because there's nobody bidding against that type of keyword. Let's say yoga management software that integrates with Stripe. Like that's a pretty specific keyword, right? So you could probably, I'm just using that as an example, that's not a real one, but at Gym Desk, that might have been an example of us. We could have acquired that for low. So let's just say for the sake of argument, we're gonna say Google PPC is low cost, but let's say we're getting low return because a lot of the traffic doesn't convert, but let's say it lands down there. Let's say SEO. Where do we think SEO lands? Depends again. So let's use the example, let's say that it's a high cost. You need to hire people in your backyard, United States writers, you're not going overseas, so you need to pay this person, let's say $70,000 a year to do writing. On top of that, you need to work with an agency to help find that keyword list. You're going to hire them to do a competitor audit, a keyword audit. You're doing SEMrush, you're doing all of those tools. Let's say it's going to cost you 30 grand to get the starter piece, the document, the Excel sheet that you need to even start writing a piece of content, which you should do, by the way. You shouldn't do it just blindly, right? Let's say that it's a high cost, but let's say it might cost you a lot because you're trying to do, you're really investing in it, but it's going to get you a high return because you're targeting low traffic, high intent, long tail keywords. That's a strategy that I've used across the board at a lot of companies I've worked for. Those three things in particular: low traffic, because your competitors aren't going to go after them because it's not worth their time. High intent, these are buzzwords that they're looking, they are actively Googling a pain point that they have. And what was it? Long tail. Thank you, long tail. These are long strings of keywords. This isn't just gym software. This is gym management software for yoga companies that need blah, 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 right? These are long tail. So like, let's say SEO lands up here. The next thing you're gonna do is divide into the quadrant. We're gonna take this, a different color here, and we're gonna draw this, dots. Now we've made our quadrant. These have labels, each four corner. Low cost and low expected value. These are called quickies. During my time at Online Growth Systems, I worked with a customer who we would have a standing weekly call with, and they would always say, what are the quick wins? What is the low-hanging fruit? And it became a joke at our company that we would always say, low-hanging fruit? You got any low-hanging fruit for me this week? Because that was like, they said it probably 10 times per call. Because they liked this quickies. They liked this quadrant the best. They wanted to see return immediately. What's something that we can do today that'll get us results tomorrow, right? It might be low cost, but you're probably gonna have low return, right? Those are the quickies. Those are the quick wins. Up here, when you have low cost and a high return, that is where you want to be. This is the best quadrant to start. This is where you should start. These are your slam dunks. No-brainers is another one, is another word you could use. These are the ones that it's going to be low cost, time-wise, cost-wise. It's going to get a lot of returns. So that might be webinars. That might be social for you, right? This is the quadrant you should start at. Things that are high cost, low value, this is the last quadrant you want to tackle, right? These are the turtles. It's very high cost. It might be a strategy that'll start paying for itself in 5 years. These are the companies that pursue these. They've saturated all these other quadrants. There's nothing else to do. These are the Fortune 500s that are, okay, let's split test the color of the button, right? Like, let's say you're spending a ton of time and hours into that. Those are turtles strategies. It's still valid to do those, but those are the last ones you want to tackle in this quadrant. And up here, when you have a high cost and a high expected value, those are your moonshots. Another example of one that could go up here, I would say, are partnerships, right? So it might take you 6, 7 months, maybe even a year or 2 years to develop a really lucrative partnership. Let's say it's an agency that works and serves the same exact customer target profile that your SaaS company is trying to sell to. But it takes you 2 years to develop that trust, to actually build a relationship with them where they're actually sending you business. You can get from 0 to 1 million with one lucrative partnership, with one. But it might take you 2 years to develop that relationship, right? So high cost, high value, I would say partnerships are up there as well. So now that we've had our quadrants, the last piece here is you need to prioritize and assign. You want to go from the top left to the bottom right. You're doing slam dunks first, then you just determine if you want the quickies or the moonshots, kind of depends on where you're at, and turtles last. Then you start assigning them. Taking action is key. Okay, that concludes today's talk. Again, my name's Dick Polipnik. I would love your feedback. There's 5 questions. It's a Google form. It's not going to ask you for your email. It asks for your name if you want to be optional about it, or optionally give it to me. And then the last question is if you want a copy of these slides, I'll send you a copy of those slides. And if you click yes, it'll bring you to a second page on that form. Then it'll ask you for your name and email so I can send it to you. But otherwise, I would love your feedback. I am on LinkedIn. That's where I'm the most active if you want to connect with me. I'm also on X, formerly known as Twitter, though I'm much, much more active on LinkedIn. So thank you.